Good morning. We are gathered today on Treaty 6 territory, and I acknowledge the Métis people who share a deep connection to this land. I'm Rakhi Pancholi, the Alberta NDP Critic for Education, and I'm joined today by my colleague Rhiannon Hoyle, Critic for Advanced Education, and our leader, Rachel Notley. We're here today because the UCP is slamming the door on vulnerable Alberta kids who want to finish high school. Through the Foundational Learning Assistance Program, or FLA, administered by Alberta Advanced Education, the province provides approximately $1,000 each month to high school students who are 16 to 18 years old and are no longer living with their parents in their home. Young people over the age of 18 who want to complete high school are also eligible. The funding is for education and living expenses. Recently, our caucus has heard from many Alberta high schools who were advised that the UCP will no longer be accepting applications for the FLA program for the 2023-24 fiscal year. The UCP has capped this program, even as demand is increasing. By definition, the young people who apply for this program are highly vulnerable and need this vital support to be able to finish high school. The reason given by the ministry for closing applications is that there has been a, quote, sharp increase in demand, end quote, and, quote, budget constraints, end quote, which has meant that the amount allocated for this year was already fully committed by September 29th, 2023. This is the first time this program has been capped in this way. I'll now turn things over to my colleague, Rhiannon Hoyle.
Thank you, Rakhi. Last week, Rakhi and I sent a letter to Education Minister Dimitrios Nikolaides and Advanced Education Minister Rajan Sawhney, expressing our concerns regarding this cruel cap on funding for vulnerable students in our province. Every student who has the desire and tenacity to complete high school, despite significant financial and social challenges, should be given the support to succeed. We have asked Ministers Nikolaides and Sawhney to do whatever is necessary to support these students to finish high school. It is important for their future as well as for the strength and resiliency of our economy. We have yet to hear back from either of them. I would now like to invite Rachel to the mic.
Well, thank you so much, Rhiannon, and thank you, Rakhi, for your advocacy on this issue. We're hearing heartbreaking stories of young students who've been denied this funding and who now believe that they have no choice but to drop out of high school. Think about that for a moment. These are young people who have stayed in schools despite real challenges and trauma at home and who are no longer actually able to live in their parents' home. And with just a little bit of support, these young people can complete high school and unlock the possibility of a better job and even a post-secondary education. Frankly, failing to support these students is to kick them out of school and even further into poverty and to erect very possibly lifelong barriers to them. Honestly, this is an utterly cruel and thoughtless decision. This government is abandoning some of our most vulnerable citizens for the sake of a few $1 million. If we had a forward-looking government, we would invest in these young people and give them every chance possible to succeed. If Danielle Smith can find hundreds of millions of taxpayers' dollars to splash around on her favorite projects and her propaganda campaigns, then surely we can find a few $1 million to help these vulnerable kids finish high school. We call on the UCP to immediately remove the cap on the program and to properly fund every eligible student in Alberta, no matter what high school they are attending in what community. And I'd also like to make just a couple comments. We understand that the health minister has just finished talking about an announcement, and I just want to say this. Families all across this province are in crisis, desperately looking for primary care, looking for a family doctor, looking for the care they need. And unfortunately, today's announcement is merely yet another UCP plan to make a plan. There is no immediate help for these families who are in crisis, who are seeking support, who are seeking access to health care. we can do better. Alberta's NDP rolled out a very detailed proposal almost a year ago, and we are quite surprised, quite honestly, to see the UCP continuing to drag their feet on this matter. So thank you. We're happy to take your questions on any of these issues.
Thank you. Just a reminder, if you're on Zoom, it's the raise hand function. If you're on the phone, it's *9. We have time for one question and one follow-up today. Please state your name and outlet and who you would like you to direct your question to. We'll start here in the room.
Thank you. I'm Adel from CTV Edmonton. The question is for any three of you. Given the fact that the UCP government is putting a cap on funding for vulnerable youth, if you're in that position in office as the premier of the province, what would you do to help those vulnerable high school students?
Well, of course, the last thing we would do is slam the door on them and tell them to drop out of high school because of budget constraints. There would be no cap in place. We would not only be ensuring that everybody who applied got support and assistance, we would restore the funding to our education system that has been cut on so many different levels by this UCP government over the last 5 years. We'd make sure that those kids had more support. We'd make sure that those folks had mental health supports in the schools that have been cut, that they had English language learning supports in the schools that had been cut, that they had students with different learning needs supports that have been cut. And the last thing we would do is tell kids who have no house to live in that now they also have to drop out of high school.
No follow-up. No. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to our first caller on the line. Michelle, your line should be open.
From CBC. I wanted to ask you about the latest developments in the battle over the CPP versus the APP. So, of course, yesterday we had the CPP Investment Board write to Jim Dinning and talk about, raising their concerns that the advertising campaign and the consultation is biased and not providing Albertans with the facts about the drawbacks of leaving the CPP. And, of course, today we have a letter from the Prime Minister saying that he wants his cabinet and his government to fight for the CPP and do everything it can to keep it intact, and also to tell Albertans about the risks of leaving. So I wanted to get your reaction to these two developments in the last 24 hours.
Well, listen, none of this really surprises me. Canadians all across the country are deeply concerned about Danielle Smith's extremely ill-advised scheme to destabilize the retirement security of people from coast to coast to coast. And we've not only heard from the folks that you described, Michelle, but we've heard from the BC Premier, the Ontario Premier, the Nova Scotia Premier. I've spoken to the recently today sworn-in Premier of Manitoba about these issues. And the reality is that those folks, along with many Albertans, are concerned about the retirement security of folks all across the country. What I will say is this, though, is that here in Alberta, we're focused on the retirement security of Albertans. And at the end of the day, this is a threat to the retirement security of Albertans. And we have now heard from over 26,000 Albertans, 90% of whom want Danielle Smith to keep her hands off of their pension and to stop gambling their retirement security. They want her to stop this ridiculous scheme and listen to the people of this province.
Do you have a follow-up, Michelle?
Yes, thank you. Do you think it's helpful, though, for the Prime Minister to weigh in, given how this government doesn't really like him all that much, for him to sort of say, you know what, we're going to do everything we can to make sure Albertans know about leaving the CPP and what it will mean?
Well, I think, listen, at the end of the day, what I know is that Albertans already have a very clear view of this. Albertans understand that Danielle Smith is spending money right now, not on an objective consultation, but rather on a biased propaganda campaign rife with misinformation. And Albertans don't actually need anybody to tell them that because they can see it right in front of their faces. But, you know, it is important, I think, you know, like the CPPIB yesterday rolling out some of their information. That is important because I think Albertans do need to have the facts, just like they need to have the chance to be in person, to talk to the government about what they actually think about this. So at the end of the day, what we know, again, 26,000 people have answered our survey, a survey within which they were asked, do you want in or do you want out? And now over 90% said, we want to stay in, thank you very much. 26,000 people. The UCP haven't asked that question to a single solitary Albertan yet.
Thank you. We'll do one more pass for questions. Just a reminder, if you're on Zoom, it's the raise hand function. If you're on the phone, it's *9. Seeing none, that concludes our press conference for today. Thank you.
Thank you.